If you think nothing happens in Denver real estate during winter, that assumption could cost you. Winter doesn't kill the market, it just changes the rules. For years, I've been tracking the Denver market through every season, and what I'm seeing this winter is creating some serious opportunities for buyers and sellers who understand the timing. This video breaks down everything you need to know about Denver's winter market right now. So you may ask yourself, does the Denver market really slow down in winter? Or is that just what everyone assumes during this time of year? And the data tells a story that most people completely miss about timing and opportunity. So you have to understand the pattern that we just came through. And if you've been watching my other videos, you know this, but we tend to slow down significantly from about mid-November all the way through the holidays. And the market just takes a holiday lull for a while. And usually there's like a little holiday hangover that happens, the first 2 weeks of January before things start to normalize and kick in. During that time frame in November, new listings dropped 41% and closed homes were down 23% compared to the previous year, just to illustrate the holiday slowdown. Also, in December, it got even slower, right? 28% less listings in December than November, the previous month. And mainly because sellers hit pause for the holidays. They don't want to deal with showings when, they've got Christmas stuff going on, and others just plan to come back as soon as they can in January. And this is where it gets interesting. The market doesn't stay slow after the holidays. So if you look at a pricing chart in Denver every year, the pricing starts to move and go up in January, and then it gets steeper in February, March, and April. And so understand that those 3 months from February through April account for 3/4 of our annual appreciation every year. So if our market grows 8%, 6% of that growth is due to the listings that were on the market in February, March, and April. If you're looking right now, you may be looking and feeling like this is kind of bleak. There's not a ton out there. I've got one client that's looking in Golden, right around the School of Mines area. And literally, like in her search that we just looked at, set up a search that's decent parameters, up to a decent price point. There are 3 options that fit her needs right now. And 2 of them were actually not even valid because they were 55 plus living. And so one option in that whole search that fits her needs, which is just crazy right now. So there are certain segments of the market like Golden that are incredibly thin right now. But a lot of other areas, you've got quite a bit to work with, but that's about to change. February, March, April, that's when we see the majority of the listings in the year come on the market. And if you're a seller, we're going to talk more later, but I'll show you exactly why this inventory surge that we're going to go through is a visibility problem if you wait too long. So days on market really tells the story as far as the pace of the market goes. And it changes your whole experience because we just came out of a market where we stretched to 45 days in February in the general market. And, the numbers last year when we were in the spring market, we were, hitting 24 to 28 days on market. So it's almost cut in half once you hit that spring time frame, and it's a completely different experience. And I expect the same thing to happen this year. And Denver is very predictable, you guys. The seasonality here is almost like clockwork. And, prices typically dip and stabilize in late fall and early winter. And then we tend to start to ramp up in pricing as soon as January all the way through July. The 4th of July is kind of our peak in pricing. And so this is when it starts. So if you want to get a better deal now than what you would get later on in the year, now's a great time to be looking, even though the options are a little bit bleak. If you can find what you're looking for, you're going to get a much better price than you would, come April or May. We did see quite a dip in pricing in December though. But, that's something that we've noticed as a little bit of a pattern. But I would definitely expect that pricing now from here on through July tends to steadily increase upward. So just understand that if you're watching the market looking to buy and get into a home, you're watching prices go up every month from here through the 4th of July. And so understanding this seasonal rhythm is one thing, but knowing how to use it to your advantage as a buyer is where the real opportunity lives right now. So if you're thinking about buying or selling in Denver this winter, I work with people making these exact decisions every single day, and I can show you the real-time data that matters for your specific situation, not for the general market and broad, but in your situation. And that's what's valuable to you. So if you'd like some help, my contact info is in the description below. All right, let's get back into it. We'll talk about what buyers should know about this winter market. So picture yourself as the only buyer that has seen a home, right, in like a 2-week span. compared to being 1 out of 15 buyers that's seen a home in a 15-day span. The shift in dynamics that's happening right now, and it changes everything about how we negotiate. It's all about supply and demand. And if a seller's getting a lot of showings and a lot of interest on a property, they're gonna be way less interested in dropping their price, giving concessions, giving buy downs, right? So early on this winter, you have some opportunity when there's way less competition compared to spring and fall. I was just in my office sales meeting a couple days ago, and I heard 3 agents say that they did lose out on multiple offers already. And this was the second week of January. So keep in mind, this stuff is starting to creep into the market in certain cases. But the greater majority are sitting longer, right? Just like last year, average days on market, 47 days. That's still a high number. That's a slow pace. So a lot of sellers that didn't price their home right or didn't prep their home right, they're scratching their heads going, where are all the buyers? When is this market going to wake up, right? And they're assuming that maybe after the Super Bowl, it'll wake up and it'll really start to carry on. So, that's something to know. If you're a buyer, fewer buyers in the market always means fewer bidding wars. And you're not competing against 10 other people, right, that may like that same home that you like. And even just having one of those changes the game completely. Like, I can't tell you how many times we made an offer that's maybe 3 or 4% low, asked for all of our closing costs, plus a 2-1 buy down, which is like $20,000 in concessions, because we're just trying to get a deal, And we think we've got it, it's all set, and then somebody else comes into the game, right? And if somebody else gets involved and writes an offer as well, all of a sudden, you're competing. And so a lot of those nice benefits that you wanted to have, with your loan and with your interest rate and all of that stuff, if you are in love with this house, that kind of goes out the window. And we're just trying to win the home for you at that point and sell you to the seller as a really good buyer. And, and mitigate the seller's risk of getting to the closing table, by really selling all the benefits of working with you. And so it's a completely different scenario once that happens. And so again, I can't emphasize enough how important seasonality is and getting after it early this year before the market gets hotter and hotter. This also gives you more timing, right? For due diligence, we can write longer deadlines. You can have more time for decision making. It's just a much better environment to be buying in during the slower time of year. Also, sellers, especially the ones that have lasted through the holidays, that didn't take their home off the market, that just let the days on market accumulate, those sellers are very motivated right now, most of them. And oftentimes they're on the market because they have to sell right now, because it's not the ideal time to be on the market, but they're on because they have a need, whether it's a job relocation, personal circumstances, it could be divorce. We've seen a lot of that lately, or urgent timelines, right? That are causing them to need to sell right now during the winter. And really that motivation that sellers have to get a deal done translates into flexibility on price and, concessions and buy downs given and all kinds of things. And so sellers are way more willing to negotiate on closing costs right now than they will be in March or April. And that's not all. Once you get to the inspection, there's a whole new set of negotiations that happens, right? And so in a hot market where, let's say, a seller has a backup offer, however, if they're in a market where it was slow, it took them 47 days to find a buyer, and now they finally found one and they do not want to go back on the market, think about the difference in mindset there. That seller really wants to get this deal done and they're willing to do what it takes to get it done, even if it's kind of a bizarre request sometimes. So over these last 3 years, the 2-1 buy downs have become a great product and a great lending tool to help you save a ton in interest as a buyer. And so the way that works is if a home is priced at, let's just say, $600,000 and you're putting 20% down, and let's say that you're borrowing, right in that 480 mark, it's going to be about 2.25% of your loan amount. So borrowing 480, that would be about $12,000. We're going to ask the seller to pay for you in the negotiations so that you can buy your interest rate down from 6%, where rates are today, down to 4%. It'll save you $12,000 in interest. It's the exact cost that the seller's paying for. That's how much you're saving in interest as a buyer, which makes it so that your payment is that much less. So that's a huge savings, right, that you can take advantage of in the market. But sellers probably won't be doing much of that. We're going to see that greatly reduced come March and April and May. But right now we're still seeing it on quite a few deals. So winter just favors prepared buyers, not rushed ones, right? The rushed buyers, they're just flying by the seat of their pants, right? And usually not getting the best end of the deal as far as the negotiations go, and just running into homes, falling in love with something and paying, whatever it is that they're asking for it. Where if you're prepared, if you understand all of these elements that I'm telling you about the market, then you can not only win on price, but you can win on concessions, buy downs, and also inspection costs. So that's the key, right? And you got to nail it with timing, or you have to be even more selective and just look at homes that have had days on market that have accumulated. And we can write searches like that. We can create a search for you on the MLS that will just have you looking at homes that have been on the market for 50 days or more. So we're more than happy to do that for you if you would like to have us set up an auto search that will just keep coming to you with listings like that. And once they hit that 50-day mark, to see if you can just find a deal and then go deal shopping. And the coolest part about, being a buyer in the wintertime is you're dealing with serious sellers, not just people testing the market. And so, if you're a winter buyer, you're not looking for a perfect someday home. You're looking for solutions now, and you really have sellers that are willing to deliver on that now as well. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And usually during this time of year, I kind of love it because it creates cleaner, more straightforward negotiations without emotional bidding wars involved. And, if you're a buyer, you tend to have less of an emotional roller coaster because you don't lose out on that home that you fall in love with. And, just a personal observation that I've had is that buyers are getting the better side of things with negotiations right now. If you're wondering, how many transactions are actually happening right now compared to last year, is the market heating up as far as the number of people moving? We're up 9% as far as transactions closed this December compared to last December of 2024. I think I've told you in the past that our list price to close price ratio has been 98.5%. So the sellers are usually giving about 1.5% from their current list price after adjusting price a couple times before that. So usually they're selling for about 3.5% less than their original list price. Now that just sunk to 98% for detached homes in December. So when we had that little dip in price, on average, sellers are taking about 2% off the price of their current and final list price. And so that means buyers are negotiating a little bit better. They're not paying full asking price in most cases. On average, they're paying 2% less than that presented final list price. Also, another metric that we like to look at is months of inventory. So we just imagine that if no listings happened going forward, right? No other homes were listed or entered into the market. With the current inventory that we have, how long would it last based on the buyer demand that we have? And so we have 2.5 months of inventory in this market, which that's like balanced market or even seller's market material. Okay. Usually anywhere between 4 and 6 is balanced. Anything under 4 is more of a seller's market. Anything over 6 is more of a buyer's market. We haven't been over 6 in a while, other than over 2 million price point. And so 2.5 months of inventory is not a lot, you guys. That inventory can go away pretty quickly, but I think that we're scheduled to have quite a few listings hit the market this year that I think will keep that number elevated. It's not one of those markets that if you're in the springtime, you're going to feel it. You're going to see some bidding wars with 2.5 months of inventory, and it's definitely going to change the way things feel in the market as that days on market shrinks to the 20s. It's definitely not a crazy seller's market like it was during the pandemic, but it's probably not going to be just a crazy buyer's market like it has been the last 3 years either. Getting more to balance this year is probably what we're going to see. Well, and if you're thinking about selling, you may be wondering, is winter going to put you at a disadvantage based on what I'm saying? So let me show you why the opposite can be true and what sellers should know here in the winter. Here's something that surprises most sellers. Your biggest competition isn't other homes on the market right now. It's your own pricing strategy and how you present your property when inventory is this low. So like I said, you got a lot of tired homes that lasted through the holidays and are still there. They're still trying to get their mission accomplished. So if buyers are seeing that, but then they're comparing that to your home that's priced right, that looks great, prepped for sale, most of the time your home will go very quickly. You'll have a lot of success even this time of year. Not to mention interest rates down to 6% right now from, a high of 7.4% 4 months ago. And that's a gradual decline in interest rates that's been helping affordability quite a bit and bringing millions of buyers back into the market. Because every time an interest rate drops even 0.5%, that usually creates about a $300 less payment on average. And so it makes a big difference when interest rates move, and it gets the market excited. They see that and they see that, hey, there's FOMO again, right? If I don't move on this and I don't get out and start looking and buy a house, I'm going to miss it because interest rates are going to drop and then everybody's going to flood the market and get in. Also, you have to understand that fewer competing listings does mean way more visibility in the marketplace if you're priced correctly. I can't tell you how many times I have had a listing sit for a couple months in the fall and during the holidays, and then we take it off, bring it back on after the holidays for a fresh new listing with 0 days on market because we did a 31-day zombie reset, right? Like I've talked about in other videos, and then it sells in the first weekend with multiple offers. It's amazing this time of year what it does, even, compared to that December, November timeframe. You'll definitely see a difference in experience with the number of buyers that are waking up right now. And so we got all the way down to 7,000 listings on the market. Right now, we currently sit at about 7,200 halfway through January. And so we've got some incline that's starting to happen, but they're getting gobbled up pretty quick. It's not a huge surge in listings yet, but it could be in the coming months. So there's an opportunity window that you can get it out there if you play your cards right. And lastly, you have to understand that the winter buyers are pretty serious. They're not just browsing either. So some are deal seekers, right? I think the deal seekers are gone now. That was November, December. Now these buyers are the ones that are like the early adapters trying to get in before everybody else does. They're serious. They want to make something happen because they're afraid of that spring rush that could occur. And so they want to land something now rather than paying 20, 30, 40 grand more for it in 3 months. Most of the time, these winter buyers, they have real timelines, relocation needs that are happening quite a bit. We've had a lot of those this year that we've helped, and also expiring leases that expire in the springtime, right? End of March, end of April, and they need a house before that lease expires so they don't have to sign up and make a landlord rich for another year. So I'll break down the exact window of when the seller's advantage starts to disappear. So you want to pay attention to these numbers. And when it happens, it results in a lot more higher quality showings and efficient sales processes when homes are priced right and turnkey. Pricing and presentation matter more than ever in the wintertime. If you're a seller, you can't just overprice your home and hope for the best like it might be in the hot spring market. You have to price it like it's winter still. That's a big key to being successful this time of year. And overpricing in the winter often leads to longer market time. And then by the time the hot market hits, you've already got 45, 50 days on market, and everybody's thinking, what's wrong with this place? Why is it still sitting here? And then they jump to conclusions. Oh, it must be that crack that I saw in the drywall. Then that's why, or they jump to, oh yeah, it's because nothing's updated. They didn't update this or this or this, and they pick at it. Even though you just spent 60 grand, updating the kitchen, they'll pick at your paint color or something like that. So just making sure that you're pricing it correctly will make it so that you're not that tired listing that everybody's wondering about. So doing the fundamentals correctly is huge. Professional HDR photography is a big deal, okay? Making sure that your home is light and bright and that it's prepped that way, that you've got some warmth, right, in your decorating. And also the layout is critical. So if you've got too much furniture in the way of walkways and areas where people are going to be trafficking through your home, that's not good. That's a big opportunity to improve your showing experience. Strong marketing plans that are actually using video to market your home. They're using partnerships with the big boys, right? Like Zillow, Homes.com, Realtor.com. Those are they can be your best friends as far as getting the home out there and exposing it with prioritization on those sites. And that's something that we do. We partner with number 1 and number 2, Zillow and Homes.com. We always have that relationship with them so that our sellers can get the best views and more prioritization with 3D tours on their websites. And that creates twice the shares, twice the views, and twice the showings. And I've seen it play out over and over again. Every time any of you listeners call me and say, hey, I've been on the market with another agent for 4 months. How do I get out of this? And how can I come over and list your home with you? We had an experience just this past year where a seller was on the market for 5 months and they had 3 showings during 5 months. And we listed it. We were on for 45 days, had 26 showings and sold the house just in time so that they could go buy their new construction property. Makes a huge difference to have a great marketing plan. And it wasn't just the marketing plan. It was also prepping the home right. Okay, we actually added a 3rd bedroom on that home just by closing a couple walls on a loft. And it created a way bigger viewing pool of buyers who wanted to see that home because of that. Okay, we also did a couple little tweaks to the way it presented itself online. Okay, better pictures, less clutter, less bath towels in the way, less rugs. There's a lot of little things that you can do on surfaces to clear those off. Okay, little things like that can change the whole dynamic of your showing process and make people's eyes look in the places that you want them to look to be emotionally engaged in your home. And I truly believe that it's the strong marketing plans that separate successful winter listings from the ones that just linger on the market. So also understand, if you're a condo or a townhome seller right now, you have to price even more aggressive because of the dynamics of supply and demand right now and all the issues that are going on with these HOAs and hailstorms and special assessments and bad insurance policies. All that stuff's caused a little bit of a stigma. And so you have to make sure you're priced correctly and presented very well in order to sell quickly on those types of homes. And I don't know that the sliding is done yet on those. I don't know that those will just rebound this year. It's been 3 years that they've declined a little bit. And I don't know that that's going to change this year because those problems are still existing. They're not going away. I think supply and demand will be a little bit better this year, but you still got some issues that could cause some lingering effects there. So if it's time to get out of one of those, give me a call and I'm happy to help with that. So I would just make the argument that January doesn't hurt your sales in Denver, poor strategy does. So you have to understand that if a home needs significant work cosmetically, winter may not be the ideal time to sell. But if you're just testing the market with an aspirational price with no urgency, you're also going to struggle during this time frame. So if you're fundamentally sound, January can be a great time to sell a house. So I can't emphasize enough that if sellers are motivated, priced right, and they present their home well, winter is their advantage, and it truly can be. So I can show you how to do that. But here's the piece that ties everything together. You have to understand that when to act isn't just about preference, it's about protecting your wallet and your negotiating power. And that's the exact reason why, winter timing really matters. Everyone's planning their spring move right now. And you know what that means. By April, you're going to be fighting the exact crowd that you could have avoided entirely by acting 3 months earlier. So on the buying side, I can't emphasize enough, waiting until spring means you will be competing with more buyers and you will pay more for the same home that you may be able to find right now. And so everybody thinks that April and May is the best time to buy. But, if you all jump in the market at once, what do you think happens? Buyers are competing against dozens of other buyers during that time frame for the same properties. So if you're not a fundamentally sound listing, you're not going to do any better in the springtime than you would now. Okay? You're just going to get passed over. But understanding that you've got some opportunity right now to sell before there's more competing listings in your street, potentially. And it's important to know that the market doesn't just flip overnight. Early spring momentum starts quietly. And then, by the time that everyone realizes the market is heating up, prices have already climbed. The Denver market begins its acceleration in February, not May. Okay, that's the most common misnomer that I hear. Because sellers always say I thought the best time to sell was May, June, July, right? July is honestly one of the worst months to be on the market. It's our summer lull. It's when everybody's distracted from back to school, from last vacations, great weather. They're not thinking about real estate as much at that time. And you've got a very elevated number of listings that you're competing with. So February is the time, you guys, to get everything prepped, get it up and running. And March and April are just prime. That is the best. And remember, if a fast sale is what you're looking for, last year, average days on market dropped from 47 days in January to 33 days in February. A 14-day improvement is amazing spring acceleration. Also, median price jumped 4% from January to February last year. Okay, so February through July, that's when prices are steadily on the rise, increasing. So if you're a buyer, do you want to buy now before prices steadily increase for 6 months in a row? Or do you want to wait until later and pay more? And I understand you may have a reason to wait. You may have credit that's building up. You may be saving up for a down payment. You may be waiting for a lease to end. You may be waiting for a new job to happen. I totally get that. So I'm understanding and empathetic of those situations. I just want you to know that's what the timing looks like, and that's the reality of the market. And mortgage rates just keep holding right there around 6% right now. And it seems like they should be around there for the majority of the year, potentially even dropping more. And so I wouldn't expect a dramatic drop anytime soon unless they start subsidizing mortgage-backed securities and putting government money into that. Then that would be the fastest way for them to drop, even faster than the Fed rate. When the Fed rate drops typically that's one element, but it's not the end all like everybody thinks it is. And so but when they were subsidizing mortgage-backed securities and buying up a ton of bonds as a government entity during like 2008, that time frame, that's when we saw the crazy low superficial interest rates. And so if they start doing that again, which it's been proposed, that could drastically change things. But my better guess is that it's probably going to be gradual and a lot like what we've seen over the last 4 months, where they just kind of taper down a little bit and get a little bit more attractive as we go on. Every year, you guys, except for 2020, the pricing curve has gone up from here, period, until around July. So, I have to emphasize that starting now positions people ahead of the spring rush, and it doesn't make you just reacting to the market later, right? And just getting into a home for the deal that you kind of didn't want. But making strategic moves now will get you that deal, that interest rate that you wanted all along. So with all of that in mind, let me bring this home and tell you exactly what your next step should be based on where you are right now. Winter doesn't pause Denver's real estate market. It just shifts who has the power. And when the clock starts ticking, price increases. So the buyers and sellers who understand this timing aren't waiting for perfect conditions. They're making moves while everyone else is still in the planning stage. If you're ready to buy or sell in Denver this winter and want a strategy built on real time, make sure to call me or text me on this number below, and I'll walk you through what makes sense for your situation. And if you'd like to know more about the Denver real estate market, I'll put a link here at the bottom of my video talking about something that most people get blindsided by. So check it out so that you're coming into this market prepared. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.